One thing I've noticed guiding different groups of British anglers up here is a lot of them come to Norway with totally inadequate tackle. Bearing in mind that often you're fishing in depths in excess of 500 or even 600 feet and catching big fish that fight extremely hard, any flaws or weaknesses in your tackle will be very quickly exposed. Little things like using quality treble hooks on your perks, hooks that are not going to snap. All too often I see these cheap chrome plated ones that start to corrode and they suddenly snap and you'll lose your fish. The other problem you get with some treble hooks is that they're just too thin in the wire, and I've seen many good fish lost by the hook points being straightened completely out. One of the beauties in fishing in the fields up here is you don't actually need to bring a lot of tackle. Most of the areas are very snag free, certainly compared to the wreck fishing scene back in the UK. As an average, I would say if you brought a selection of 8 perks between 5 and 6 ounces up to about a pound, you'd be pretty well covered. And in most of the fishing centres, you can actually stock up locally. Okay, the tackle's more expensive, but it's certainly cheaper in the long run than paying a lot of excess baggage charges. It's not just the size of the lure that's important, but it's also the shape. The main sort of shapes that you need to bring, firstly, the aptly named Norway design, which is basically triangular, and these have a fantastic fluttering action as the lure falls down through the water. It's a great lure to use when there's not a lot of drift, relatively shallow water. Basically the lure fishes itself as it's got this wobbling action as it falls down through the water column. Whenever you're fishing very deep water or a fast drift or a combination of both, you need the design that's very cylindrical. It's called a fast drop, and basically this lure just plummets vertically very quickly. Obviously the golden rule with perking is always to try and maintain a vertical line, and if your lure's going to take too long to get to the bottom, by the time you get down it's already going to be angling out behind the boat. Some of the marks are relatively shallow, 150, 200 foot, even less. And for these, a selection of smaller perks in the 200 to 300 gram range are absolutely perfect. These are one of my favourites. I think they're made in Denmark and they're called Wiggler. They've got a fantastic action and they're really a good fish catching lure. Another favourite with the Norwegian anglers is this very slim flat bodied lure called a sting silder. Again, it's got a wonderful fluttering action as it falls down through the water. So it's not a lure you use on a fast drift or very deep water, but on more favourable conditions you'll catch a lot of fish with this. I'm actually personally attached to this particular one because it was on this lure that I caught my best fish in Norway, my best cod in Norway, which is 52.5 pound. So there's always a few of those in my box. Jig heads are another worthwhile addition to your tackle box. These can be fished either with rubber shads or twin tails, or you can catch the small coalies which are abundant in many of the areas, usually just off the dock where you're staying. Remove the backbone, mount them onto the jig as you would a shad. It's a fantastic lure to work very slowly across the bottom. You catch a lot of cod on these, also torsk and most of the other species, but particularly halibut. A lot of the anglers who fish specifically for halibut in Norway use these jig heads. As halibut go, it's only a baby, but it's actually using a shad, trying to catch some of the cold fish and cod in mid-water. They're fishing about 100 metres of water, and I reckon this one took about 20 metres below the surface. See my shad still deep inside. I'm looking at those teeth, I'm going to wait a while before I try and retrieve it. Oh, still going. Shagging for flatties. Strings and muppets are fine when you're covering new ground and you basically want to explore and see exactly what's down there. They're fine baited or unbaited. They'll catch a lot of haddock, obviously cod, coalfish and all the other species. But I really can't advise you strongly enough that as soon as you start connecting with a few decent sized fish, you should take these off and fish a single perk. And the last thing you want to do is lose a good fish due to a multiple hookup. In recent years, travel rods have become widely available in the UK, and whenever you're flying to Norway or indeed anywhere else in the world, they really are ideal. Not only do they cut down on weight, but they're a lot less cumbersome to lug about than the big tubes that we used to have to carry until these were developed. The ideal rod for fishing in northern Norway, even for the big cod, is the 20 to 30 pound class. I use the Shimano Xage or Beastmaster range, which are excellent and have caught me a lot of good fish. And certainly these are the rods that most of the guys who come on my trips tend to use. The softer action is really good for helping to absorb the continual head pumping lunges of a big cod as you work it up through the depths. If you come with a rod that's too stiff and you're using braid, you will lose fish as a result of the hooks getting ripped out. I've mentioned braid a couple of times. It's an absolute must for fishing up here. If you're going to fish these deep water marks, you must use braid. Something in the 30 to 40 pound range is perfect. I use Shimano Antares, which is a very good hard wearing braid, excellent knot strength. It's served me well for a number of years. At the end of the braid, you need a good working length of 50 pound leader. I use Maxima Chameleon, 50 pound break-in string, for 25-30 foot. Certainly when you're fishing on the bigger boats, this is a must, because if a big fish starts to kite and drift under the boat as you draw it towards the surface, you need the insurance of a good thick mono leader to help prevent losses. And again, with braid, a lever drag really is the best choice. You've got a lot more control over the clutch settings, and it's a lot smoother than star drags, which tend to stick for a few seconds before they actually start to slip. TLD 20, TLD 25, wide diameter spools, perfect for giving you maximum retrieve when pulling your lures back up, or obviously playing fish back from deep water. A lot of fish are lost because anglers use cheap American snap links to attach their perks or traces to their line. These little stainless clips, if I can just unclip it from here, are the best. They're widely available now in a lot of tackle shops. Peter Trott at the Cornish Lure Company, who supplies most of these perks, he will actually supply you these. I think they're actually used for long lines, but they're very, very strong. I've never seen one fail. The shads are a great alternative to heavy perking in deep water, which can be strenuous. Certainly my shoulders are aching after over 2 weeks of constant fishing. Shads are great for actually covering all layers of the water column, because quite often you'll find the cod will be feeding in mid-water or surprisingly close to the surface. This is particularly the case when they're feeding on silt or small herring, which come into these fjords in vast shoals. At other times they're feeding hard on the bottom. Obviously the perks are best suited to cover those eventualities, but shads, jellyworms, Eddystone eels, they all catch fish up here. It certainly feels like a better fish. Took a 14-ounce Norway, stainless steel Norway perk just after I bounced it on the bottom. Big solid tape, bang, bent the rod down. You just tell by the way it's slowly nodding its head and bending the rod. It's a good sized fish. It's a good fish. The trouble is with these perks, until you actually see the fish, you're never sure how good a hook hold you've got. Quite often it's just barely in the fish's mouth. The way this fish is nodding, I confidently predict it's significantly over 20 pounds. It certainly feels like it's over 30 pounds. The real thing about catching these cod in Norway, one minute you're catching 5, 6, 7, 8 pounders, and all of a sudden you find yourself up into a nice fish. It's not quite as big as I thought it was, but I think it'll comfortably go 30 pounds. Nice fish. 30 pound 8 ounces. It's certainly too heavy to keep holding out there.